In the island area, there was a pair of infamous Gray brothers who terrified everyone. Through ruthlessness, they seized control of the local underworld. Any area they set their sights on, people had to willingly make way. As a gang boss, the older brother Reggie went to work regularly every day. This familiar-faced underling had the car ready for him. Meanwhile, two nearby police officers on surveillance had woken up even earlier than them. So, that gangster boss started mocking the police car. The police were already unhappy with this old car. They were so angry their faces turned green. They had wanted to change cars for a long time, but how could they make money as fast as gangsters? At that time, due to limited channels for buying cars, even used cars were not cheap. The South London area also had a powerful gang, and they wanted to take over the Gray brothers' territory. They deliberately drove a car into the older brother Reggie, then openly issued a challenge. It seems they didn't know how ruthless the Gray brothers were. Reggie drove a heavy truck straight into the restaurant where the South London gang was dining. Then, the South London gang pretended to send an emissary to invite the Gray brothers for negotiations. The location chosen was a bar in a neutral zone. Such enthusiasm for no reason surely meant something was fishy. The younger brother Ron immediately drew his gun, but the older brother stopped him and expressed his willingness to attend the appointment. The underlings all thought they shouldn't go, but surrendering was never the Gray brothers' style. Arriving at the appointed bar, as expected, the opposing leader did not appear. Instead, there was a crowd of henchmen. The opponent was numerous and had the advantage, but the two brothers remained calm. On the contrary, upon seeing the clubs in the opponent's hands, the younger brother felt he had been insulted. "Are you holding these rolling pins to make a birthday cake?" A bunch of amateurs with no guts. He walked out, muttering curses. After cursing, he slammed the door and left. The opponent thought he had fled. Seeing the older brother Reggie alone, they became even more complacent. The older brother acted as if nothing was wrong, casually checking the purity of the beer. But while laughing and joking, he advanced and pulled out the brass knuckles on his hand. At the same time, the younger brother Ron found a hammer and snuck back in through the back door. With one hammer blow, the melee officially began. When one Tom Hardy goes berserk, no one can resist, let alone two Tom Hardys. Just grab one person and beat them to death, and the others, no matter how strong, would have to submit. After a fierce battle, all the opponent's men were knocked down. To ensure no one would have trouble walking later, the younger brother Ron didn't forget to add another hammer blow. The two brothers became famous after that battle. Before the rival gang could even plan a counterattack, luck smiled upon the Gray brothers. The leader of the South London gang was arrested by the police for extortion and sentenced to 25 years in prison. From then on, all of London fell under the control of the Gray brothers. The younger brother's seemingly abnormal behavior was due to his intermittent schizophrenia, often doing things that normal people couldn't comprehend. For example, setting fire to a grand party or making shocking statements. He had been detained by the police in a mental hospital for intentional injury, but the hospital director couldn't stand up to the biggest gang in London. If he didn't release the man, they would break his legs. Therefore, he had no choice but to confirm that Ron's health was normal. However, releasing such a person, it was feared that the entire population of London would not be safe. Thus, the director instructed the older brother to ensure the younger one took his medication on time. The younger brother Ron had always depended on his older brother Reggie. Reggie had to run the gang by himself while also taking care of his younger brother, but he felt happy doing so. Now, the gang was thriving. The family was safe. That was his greatest achievement. However, the appearance of a girl shattered everything. That day, the driver, also an underling, overslept and didn't show up. Reggie had to go call him personally. The one who opened the door was the driver's sister. He had never seen a girl so pure and sweet, because he used the sweetest words to flirt with the girl who was sucking on a lemon drop. I ask you, what girl could resist such flirting? At this moment, the driver poked his head out. The girl asked if her brother had caused any trouble. Reggie took the opportunity to find an excuse for a date. Not only was the girl not angry, but she shyly agreed to the date. And to emphasize, her mother came out and forbade her daughter from talking to gangsters. Reggie took the candy out of his mouth and returned it to her. As a result, she put the candy back in her mouth without hesitation. This act completely captured Reggie's wild heart. The two's love was sealed with a candy. Every day, they were chauffeured in luxury cars. Their love was romantic and sweet. In her eyes, there was only him. He also lost the fierceness of a gangster when he was with her. Love brought Reggie's life to a new peak. However, Frances was a girl with great ambitions. She didn't want her future to be just a housewife, nor did she want her husband to remain a gang boss forever. Therefore, this love contradicted everything Reggie had. However, The conflict didn't just exist between the two of them. Reggie took Francis to meet his younger brother Ron. At this time, the younger brother's little dog had just been pulled out from the garage. The younger brother didn't shy away, but bluntly told Francis that he was gay. This statement startled Francis. Then, he expressed his views, meaning she shouldn't interfere with his and his brother's great gangster career. From then on, the younger brother Ron always intentionally or unintentionally made things difficult for his brother. For example, this manager named Payne. This person's way of making money was through loan sharking and fraud. These things were all despised by Ron. He believed that a proper gangster gang would never resort to such despicable tricks. On the contrary, open robbery seemed more gentlemanly. Therefore, he often pointed out Payne's faults in front of his brother. Later, through Payne, the most famous American mob boss, Meyer Lansky, sent an envoy to London to find the Gray brothers, wanting their help to launder millions of dollars in American bonds. Driven by huge profits, Reggie quickly agreed. But Ron looked displeased the whole time. He believed a tough man shouldn't be a lackey for others. The American gang's envoy noticed the abnormality and proactively showed goodwill towards him. He said he would introduce him to a beautiful woman, but Ron said he preferred men. As soon as these words were spoken, the entire atmosphere froze. Reggie was quite helpless. However, what made Reggie break down was that he later had to go to prison for half a year for an extortion case that happened a year ago. Upon entering the prison, the warden immediately gave him a show of force. The prisoners in the jail all regarded Reggie as an idol. They cheered for him. But the more they cheered, the harder the warden hit. Just like that, a gang boss who once rampaged through London was turned into a human punching bag. He really couldn't take it anymore and clung to the warden's leg, begging for forgiveness. However, his counterattack also came very quickly. He pretended to ask for a glass of water, and when the warden brought the water, he suddenly handcuffed the man. It turned out that while begging for forgiveness, he had deftly stolen a pair of handcuffs. In the end, the warden ended up in this state. During the days he was away, the younger brother Ron did not take his medication on time and began to cause all sorts of trouble. He opened his mouth and demanded £50,000 from the manager Payne, saying it was to build a city in Nigeria for children in an orphanage. A gangster gang doing charity, what a whim. With the leader absent, Payne naturally did not agree. Then, he began to take revenge on Payne, rushing onto the bar stage, chasing away the singer, and ignoring the audience's feelings, blew on a horn. After blowing, he took the microphone and cursed the upper-class people below the stage, calling them all wolves in sheep's clothing. Not surprisingly, the bar, which was once packed, quickly became empty because of him. After the older brother was released from prison, although he was very angry, he didn't pursue the matter. However, he questioned his older brother about returning without a word. The two brothers began to argue fiercely. At this point, Ron even dragged in his future sister-in-law Frances and used the crudest words to insult her wildly. Hearing this, Reggie finally couldn't hold back anymore. The fight between these two brothers can be considered a classic scene. Ron stood up and stared at his sister-in-law with a fierce look, then slapped Reggie hard. Seeing that he couldn't be stopped, Reggie had to fight back. Ron lost his temper and grabbed a wine bottle. Unable to use the bottle, he used the monkey steals the peach move. The older brother gouged his eyes. He bit the older brother's hand. After being beaten up, the younger brother completely lost all decorum, grabbing a wine bottle and throwing it. The older brother didn't indulge him anymore. Then, the older brother put a cover over his brother's head. A wine bottle ended the fight. This was the first time the two brothers had fought so violently. Francis left in anger. At this moment, Ron sobered up from his episode. He hugged Reggie and said, "My dear brother." By this point, it was very clear that his previous neurotic behavior was actually all because of Francis. He knew this woman would sooner or later steal his brother away. This sounds sentimental, but from their very first meeting, he had keenly sensed that Francis was a woman with her own pursuits. And in fact, his prediction was also correct. Reggie proposed to Francis and was willing to retire from the underworld. Reggie planned to buy another bar as a hideout after washing his hands of the business. But Ron didn't want that. He believed his brother should continue being a gangster with him. To prevent all this, he deliberately sent his underlings to disrupt that bar. Unexpectedly, the old owner of the bar was pushed to the brink. Because before, Reggie had also used violence to force the owner to give up half of his shares. Now the younger brother came to cause trouble again. It was really too much. The cornered owner sued the Gray brothers for extortion. This meant that Reggie was very likely to go to prison again. Frances, who had always longed for a normal life, was very disappointed in Reggie. She said, "If the court finds you not guilty, I will marry you. If the crime is confirmed, we will end completely." At the crucial moment, The younger brother's special hobby brought Reggie a glimmer of hope. It turned out, the younger brother was gay, and he even knew a member of parliament with the same interests. He deliberately had someone take a series of photos together. This was the real-life sex scandal of a London MP. The photos were sent to the Prime Minister. The MP was an important member of the Prime Minister's political team. Once the scandal spread, the Prime Minister would be unable to participate in the next general election. With pressure from the Prime Minister, the police department dared not investigate the Gray brothers anymore. The judge also ruled in court that Reggie was not guilty and was set free. The successful case naturally meant their wedding day had arrived. In the invisible confrontation between Ron and Frances, Frances had won. Friends and family all came to congratulate the newlyweds. Only two people were unhappy in their hearts. One was naturally Ron. The other was the mother-in-law, who did not want her daughter to marry a gang boss. She even maliciously wore a funeral outfit to curse her daughter's wedding. But what's interesting is, Ron himself may not have blessed his brother and sister-in-law, but he wouldn't allow others not to bless them. However, after getting married, Reggie continued to run the gang's business. Frances also failed to realize her dream of becoming an independent woman. Ron, who suffered from intermittent schizophrenia, had always disliked the manager Payne. That day, for some reason, he attacked the man. Reggie was angry that iron could not be forged from steel. Even the American mafia, their partners, thought the younger brother's behavior was too crazy, not in line with the underworld's code of keeping a low profile. The marital relationship grew colder. That day, an underling of the South London gang caused trouble in their territory again. The person being protected sought help from Ron. Perhaps because he hadn't taken his medicine, Ron had his underling stand guard outside, while he himself rushed into the opponent's bar. He killed the South London gang's underling in front of everyone. This gunshot would bring bigger trouble for the gang. After the murder, he knew his brother would come to hold him accountable, so he hid at his old mother's house and became her darling baby. Seeing his old mother's gentle smile, Reggie's anger immediately froze on his face. He instantly realized that no matter how useless his younger brother was, he was ultimately his family. Children are the flesh of a mother's heart. The old mother also realized that her youngest son might have caused trouble. Reggie had his underlings dispose of his brother's gun, clothes, and shoes. On another front, the police had taken full action. This was a once-in-a-thousand-years opportunity to topple the Cray brothers. Once the murder charge was established, the younger brother would surely spend his life in prison. Reggie had to clean up the mess for his brother at all costs. But Frances thought a scoundrel like Ron should be in prison. Reggie used threats to make the bartender at the crime scene not dare to identify Ron. The prosecutor had to withdraw the charges. The family was overjoyed with the great victory. Only Frances hid in a distant corner. Marrying into such a family, it's hard to know whether to be happy or sad. From then on, the marital conflicts intensified. Reggie was in a dilemma. On one side was the gang and his family. On the other was the person he loved. One day, he lost control of his emotions and committed domestic violence against Frances. Frances finally resolved to leave. This time, Ron had won. Surprisingly, Ron came to see her off, and he wasn't gloating. On the contrary, he pointed to the bruise on Frances's face and said, "Hitting women is not allowed, at least not in our family." Finally, after Frances got into the car, he said another meaningful sentence. "Frances, I've always valued you because you have the ability to see the future, and that's just like me." The meaning of this sentence, we will analyze at the end. Frances moved in with her brother. Reggie stood guard outside Frances's house for 2 weeks, begging for forgiveness. Finally, Frances agreed to see him. It seemed their conflict had been resolved. Reggie made a date for that night to take her on a trip. But that very night, she committed suicide by taking sleeping pills. On the day of the burial, the mother-in-law chased Reggie's car and spat on it. Having lost the one he loved most, he was destined to live in pain and torment. The younger brother once again made a fatal mistake, again sending someone to assassinate the manager Payne. It's a pity the assassin was too incompetent. Not only did he fail, but he almost lost his own life. The manager decided to fight to the bitter end, suing the Cray family in court. It should be known that he knew almost all of the illegal dealings the gang had carried out. This time, the police were determined to win. The sky seemed to be falling, but the carefree younger brother was still happily drinking. Reggie had no outlet for his anger. Just then, the assassin also came to the party. Reggie immediately approached him. He originally just wanted to vent his anger. Unexpectedly, this fool didn't know why he was angry, and with an innocent look said, "Why are you taking it out on me just because Frances committed suicide?" This really hit a nerve. Reggie's blood pressure instantly shot up. Unfortunately, the gun had no bullets. The man took the opportunity to try to run. Reggie grabbed a fruit knife. The people around were scared stiff. Ron asked him why he lost control like that. His whole body convulsed. He leaned close to Ron's ear and said, "Because I can't kill you, no matter how much I want to." In the end, both brothers were sentenced to prison for murder. Reggie was sentenced to 33 years, died of cancer 8 weeks after his release in 2000, at the age of 66. Ron, after being convicted, was confined to a mental hospital for schizophrenia until his death in 1995. Today's story ends here. Thank you for watching. What do you think of this movie? Please comment down below.